Welcome to a new episode of our journey inside the boundaries. Today, Rachel G and I are going to talk about mental boundaries. In the meantime, I want to welcome my very dear colleague who is accompanying me not only on this journey of boundaries, but in so many other conversations on other topics.
Hi, Letitia. Hello, everybody. It's lovely to be here again, and I love speaking about boundaries, and today, especially mental boundaries. Can't wait. Let's do this.
Yay! Before we start talking about mental boundaries, I would like to remind our audience that they can follow us on our social media, the links to which you will find in the description below, and also remind you to like and subscribe to our channels if you like these topics. So, going back to our topic of the day, mental boundaries. This is where things get more complicated because we enter more and more into the realm of the invisible because these are inner boundaries and no longer external as physical, sexual, and to some extent material boundaries were. Mental boundaries refers to your values and beliefs and in general to your personal thought process. Always seeing eye to eye with another person is not possible, and we know that.
Mhm.
Everyone has different experiences, but you have the right to your own thoughts, values, beliefs, and opinion. And it's important to give and receive respect when it comes to mental boundaries.
We absolutely have that right and that knowing on how we wish to, show up for a person, and I think that that's really important. I've seen it actually in myself and with my clients, the impact that healthy mental boundaries can have on a person. Um, it very much begins as it did with myself, with that realization that we're not our thoughts, but we are responsible for our thoughts, but nobody else's thoughts. And I found that really empowering, and it truly does help us to make those healthier choices. Um, it's like you become better in saying no or yes, and you do that with honesty, and you feel really okay when others actually turn you down and say no to you. Um, Truly being able to think and speak for yourself instead of always needing to have that urge to go and refer to another. Looking back for me was the biggest turning, well, not the biggest, but it was a turning point in my journey, because I was really learning how to trust my own decisions because I knew my truth. Um, and something that's maybe not too often mentioned is also knowing that it is actually okay to have and hold without any guilt those private, those secret little thoughts, even when that's in an intimate relationship.
Yeah. And healthy boundaries include also respecting the ideas of others. We need to think about that because it's easy to want people to respect our boundaries, but how do we deal with others? Are we willing to respect the ideas of others? Do we know when it's appropriate to talk about one topic over another?
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from my personal experience, um, it's about the deeper work that you do that really helps you here, because you're able to meet people where they are at in life. You begin to really respect the ideas and beliefs and um, their thoughts, and so as your level of self-awareness increases, the more awareness and respect that you then gain for another's ideas, beliefs, and values. And you can reach that point when you start to actually notice when you're projecting your beliefs or your thoughts or your values onto others. um, I find that when we project onto others, we're taking not into consideration or respecting where the other person is coming from. We only really want them to think or to feel or do the same as we do.
Mhm.
And I find that we're doing it because we're trying to avoid um, what we are at that time, in that conversation, in that situation that we're finding something uncomfortable to deal with. Maybe it's an unhealed trauma, so we tend to project onto others to try to avoid that feeling. And certainly during this pandemic, I think that we are seeing so much projection happening, and we see this divide that is growing because of it. Quite sad to see, I think personally. And we we all want, basically, at the end of the day, to be respected in what it is that we believe in and what we value. And we all have that right to basically assertively, not aggressively, but share those beliefs and values. But in the same tone, we also need to respect that in others, that what they believe in, what their thoughts and feelings are on a certain subject matter, is also to be respected. Um, and this is really then a true good example of what a healthy mental boundary looks like, when you can respect other people for their thoughts and at the same time still hold what you believe to be true, and not get mixed up in this right wrong situation. And when we recognize that there is a toxic belief, this is a great step in the direction of building a healthy mental boundaries, because at the end of the day, we're all kind of running these outdated programs, that only are leading to miscommunication. And by doing this inner work, then we get to identify what it is, that we're caught up in, what that particular program is, and we're able also to be able to then start to distinguish between what is a program that I'm running and maybe what someone else is running their program, so you not being influenced too much by another.
Right. Yeah, Rachel, with mental boundaries, we get into an area where it is really important to do inner work. These are, in fact, a type of boundaries that are really easy to violate because it's pretty impossible to draw a line. Therefore, doing some introspective work where you already have an idea of what your reality is in terms of your values, thoughts, and beliefs is the key to this type of boundaries. So now let's talk a little bit about what are the violations related to mental boundaries, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay, so mental boundaries are violated when someone dismisses or belittles another person's thoughts or ideas. Internal boundary violations include things like taking responsibility for someone else's thoughts, feelings, or behavior. And when someone assumes that they know how you think, feel, or what you should do, they are violating your internal boundaries. Or when someone tells you how to conduct your life or tries to manipulate you in a covert ways, they are violating your boundaries. Another very big type of violation of your mental boundaries is gaslighting. Here we open a very large topic that I will talk about it in another video in details. Now I will give you its definition and why it is a violation of mental boundaries. So the definition of gaslighting is a form of manipulation that occurs in abusive relationships. It is an insidious and sometimes hidden type of an emotional abuse in which the bully or abuser makes the target question their own judgments and reality. Ultimately, the victim of gaslighting starts to wonder if they are going crazy. So gaslighting is a technique that undermines your entire perception of reality. When someone is gaslighting you, you often second guess yourself, your memories, your perception, and after communicating with the person gaslighting you, you are left feeling dazed and wondering what is wrong with you. Tactics like this can confuse you and cause you to question your sanity, your mental sanity, so that's why I consider it such a big mental violation, boundary violation.
It's a really interesting subject and certainly worthwhile doing a separate video on it. And it's really a subject that, I think is important to get to know and to understand, because I think it's happening more and more in the world that we live in today. And I think humanity is unconscious to actually how much it is playing a part in our everyday lives. And to be fair, it's a phrase that I actually didn't know until quite recently. I had more likely referred to it as emotional abuse. So, and I think what I recognize is that people with weaker, say, boundaries rather than the rigid mental boundaries will be more susceptible to that kind of treatment. And the reason being is someone with weak boundaries lets others influence and affect their behavior because they're really unclear about what it is that they prefer, what their own preferences are, and so they will compromise their values and their beliefs to please others and to generally to avoid that conflict. And this would show up for me personally back in the days when I would like verbally agree with others, mainly maybe a partner, even when I didn't agree. I just ignored my inner voice like it wasn't even there, and I would just instead rely on the opinion or the thoughts of someone else that theirs was more of value than mine. And then on the other end of the scale, you have, of course, the people with rigid mental boundaries that maybe are not so prone to gaslighting. Maybe you have a different thought on that, Letitia. But these people I find are more, let's say, an example of rigid would be they find feedback challenging. They will either hear it as a criticism and then use that to validate their belief that everybody's against them, or they'll just kind of like reject it because if it was positive, believing that that can't be true, that you're giving me a positive feedback, so let's push it our way. And I find another sign of rigid mental boundaries is someone who can, they're those people who appear to be listening to another, but they very rarely kind of respond or get involved. They just seem to be in a world of their own. And I think that can be also partly down to the fact that they also find it hard to do that kind of small talk because in fact they are afraid that they will say something that might be the wrong thing. So that's my two
Yeah.
examples of.
I would add to this list of people with rigid boundaries, with rigid mental boundaries, the people who always think that they are right. They do not accept anybody else's opinion, and they go like they get very aggressive because they want their points to be the absolute truth. How about the reality? They don't accept anybody else's opinions, values, thoughts. So that is another one that I will add in this list of rigid boundaries. And that's interesting because I definitely belonged to the weak boundaries line and have had not one, but more than one relationships with narcissists and gaslighters. And it took me years of therapy, inner work, and observation of my own behaviors. And for anyone dealing with narcissists and gaslighters, my most valuable piece of advice I feel I can give you is advocate for yourself. Yeah. When interacting with a covert narcissist, it can be easy to lose your voice. Yeah. Because the patterns of interaction are so manipulative. It may take time for you to realize that the relationship left you in this place of not knowing how to advocate for yourself. So take time to tune back in with yourself, who you are, what you are about, your values, your goals, your talents. Strengthening your relationship with yourself is key in being able to speak up during interaction with a narcissist or any type of person. Dealing with a boundary violator involves the ability to set good internal boundaries for yourself first. It may require consistent efforts for you to develop it within yourself and then extend it to the violator. And due to this deep-rooted patterns of violation, it would be a difficult journey, but it's not impossible. You can do it. So start working on yourself first.
Yeah, absolutely. I resonate with all of those from my journey. So I'll just end with a few tips that I feel have personally helped me and have been helpful in my journey of setting these healthy mental boundaries. And firstly, understand and recognize that your partner, your friends, your family are not mind readers. It might sound simple, but it really is. Hold that thought, because it is your responsibility at the end of the day to teach another how to treat you with dignity and respect. Secondly, let go of expectations. I find that expectations are just They just kill relationships. Just become fully aware that you are always in a position to ask, but you might get let down, but don't let that stop you from asking, because if you don't ask, well, my motto is you're going to never know. And when starting out in any new kind of relationship, don't rush in and divulge all. I mean, how many of us just meet someone and would just take all our clothes off instantaneously? We wouldn't. So let's just not divulge all, just move gradually, step by step, and just reveal who you are slowly. And with each reveal, just kind of check in and see how the other is responding to your disclosure. And that will give you that mental headspace to really access whether or not, is this going to be a good relationship, is this going to be a good match for me or not. And I think to learn to stand by your beliefs rather than to stand up for them. And this little difference in wording has really helped me to stay strong when I find myself in the minority. So what you need to do is then instead become curious about the majority. So say to yourself, or say you find yourself in a group of people, and the majority have this, clearly a different viewpoint than you, such as like during this pandemic time. I think this is appearing more and more common for people, that they are finding themselves in this kind of situation. But if you can become curious about them, you are helping yourself in actually becoming better in understanding why they think what they think, and why they're doing what they're doing. But it's also showing that you respect their beliefs, thoughts, and ideas, and so hopefully you might get the same kind of behavior shown back to you. But at the end of the day, just know that we can hold a truth, someone else can hold a truth, and it doesn't need to be in agreement. So that's it. That's my little 2 pence worth.
Yes, I agree with you. I think we have talked enough about mental boundaries, although I'm sure there's so much more we could talk about. So I asked to our audience, let us know in the comments if you have any doubts, or if we haven't covered something of interest to you. I would say that it's time to say goodbye. And I remind the audience that if you liked the video, put a like, subscribe to our channels, and see you at the next one, where we will talk about emotional boundaries. And thank you so much, Rachel, for being with me. And it's a nice journey with you.
Yes, thank you, Letitia. Till next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.